Hello, I'm Denise Cazes, Program Director for the Fitness and Human Performance undergraduate program. We were informed of Makayla's passing shortly after the start of this spring semester. The loss of such a beautiful young person is always painful, but the fact that she was one of our own made it even more so. Makayla was scheduled to be in my online nutrition class this semester, but unfortunately I did not get the opportunity to interact with her. So I reached out to some of her former professors in our program and in some of the other classes that she had taken, and I'd like to share some of the feedback that I received. Dr. Carol Carmen, professor in the College of Education, had her in an online course this past summer. Dr. Carmen shared that she was an A student who was very polite in her communications. She also indicated that she wrote very well. Makayla shared in her biography that she was training for a marathon while taking a full load at UHCL and also while working full-time. Dr. Doit Waldu, associate professor in the College of Human Sciences and Humanities, also had Makayla in an online course this summer. While he did not have the opportunity to interact much with her, Makayla shared some of her core values, and she stressed the importance of self-determination. She elaborated that for someone to be resilient through the trials of life, they must be centered on who they are as a person, what they value, and they must be mindful of their capacities. The self-determination and the emphasis on being centered on who you are and what you value are rare qualities in someone so young, but are revealed by Makayla working full-time while taking a full academic load and staying committed to her health. She knew what was important to her. She knew what she wanted to do, and she was willing to work to get it. It takes some people a lifetime to figure this out. Dr. Elizabeth Beavers, associate professor in the College of Education, shared that during her course, which was focused on teaching diverse students with a strong emphasis on inclusion, Makayla consistently focused on fundamental aspects of humanity, stressing her goal as an educator was to be mindful of her actions while empowering others. Makayla believed that it was important to see and accept people for who they are individually, and also to pay attention, especially if you're a teacher, to when others are struggling. Dr. Beavers also related that she rarely has had a student who was so strong academically. Makayla was such an exceptional student, earning perfect scores, and the quality of her work was exemplary. And finally, Dr. Amy Lucas, Associate Professor of Sociology in the College of Human Sciences and Humanities, taught her last fall in her Family and Society course. Dr. Lucas shared that Makayla was always actively engaged, and it was evident in her work that she put a lot of time, thought, and care into her responses. Makayla reached out to Dr. Lucas asking for feedback on ways to improve, and she was continually seeking to learn and grow. We are all so very saddened to hear of Makayla's passing at the University of Houston Clear Lake. From what others have shared, I know that she was an exceptional young woman who touched the lives of many during her short time with us. She will be missed, but not forgotten. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Maria Curtis, and I'm the Program Director of the Anthropology and Cross-Cultural and Global Studies programs at UH Clear Lake. On behalf of my esteemed anthropology colleagues, it is our honor and pleasure to present this year's outstanding Anthropology Student Award to Jacob Henry Furler, or Henry, and for those who knew him especially well, Henny. Henry transferred to UH Clear Lake and quickly endeared himself to all those with whom he came into contact, whether in the HSH advising office or the transfer advising office and everywhere in between. And when he first landed in my online contemporary cultural anthropology course, he wrote to me to introduce himself saying, "You've probably heard of me by now," and he was not wrong. Henry's zeal for learning and his love for language were apparent in his informal emails and his formal research papers alike. Henry's love of learning was in fact apparent in all that he did. In short, his earnestness and excitement for learning were the very stuff of every teacher's dreams. After taking several courses with me, Henry's deep interest in the place of religion and navigating everyday life became apparent, and he decided to enroll in my World Religions and Anthropological Perspectives course. In the fall of 2020, when we were all adjusting to communicating remotely via Zoom, Henry shared with me and our small group of students who attended the optional office hours each week that he was doing all right with our new normal of social distancing. He confided in us that because of previous health struggles, he had come to appreciate the solace and opportunity for deep reflection that solitude might provide. He described what had once been a burden of loneliness for him had become, in fact, his superpower, and that time alone need not be lonely, but rather full of the things that we love and wonder about most if we so decide. He reminded all of us that education offered opportunities to escape into yet undiscovered worlds, and that we were much more human and alive than our Zoom screens let on. I realized after several weeks of sessions with Henry and our dedicated cohort that we were in fact much more than simply a class of professor and students. We had come to create an online ecosystem that provided all of us with a great degree of comfort and warmth. Henry's persistent optimism and good humor were the main ingredient in our weekly discussions, which often continued well over the official office hours time slot. Our shared conversations on everything from the role of suffering in spiritual growth to underwater rituals that humans across the globe take part in to connect with the divine, to the role of movement, exile, and displacement in nearly all religious traditions, to the joy and wonder of the natural world and pilgrimages to glaciers and caves, the role of miracles and the unexplained, and complex tea ceremonies in women-centered ritual in Central Asia were just some of the many wonderful topics that we shared in our weekly conversations. At the end of the fall semester, we bid each other farewell, and several students in our close group, Henry included, were signed up for my spring 2021 courses. Our circle of closeness would continue on, and with that, we dispersed into the winter break, looking forward to reconvening once again in the spring. In Henry's typical manner, he left me with a final required reading list of his own, having already sized up my spring syllabi and suggesting what elements he really wanted me to add to the course reading list. He was eagerly awaiting the spring semester and imminent graduation and was actively planning to pursue graduate school, combining his love of museums and a desire to build on his volunteer work at the Houston Holocaust Museum. His work in the latter parts of my religion class had shifted to the moral obligation to examine all the difficult stuff we would rather gloss over and ignore. He spoke with deep conviction about the role of museums and what they can do in fostering difficult social dialogues and how they might become spaces of mediation, reckoning, and forgiveness, a space where we might fashion better versions of ourselves by acknowledging and collectively witnessing past wrongs. Henry enrolled in 2 of my spring courses, and unlike him, he was not the first person to introduce himself with great fanfare on the discussion board. I was concerned and wrote to him several times, but didn't hear back. I would later learn that just days after our last email correspondence, Henry had suddenly fallen ill and passed away very unexpectedly. Henry's passing proved very difficult, and I have reflected a great deal on all of the many, many things I am grateful to have learned from him. A teacher's role is normally to think about and plan for the future. It has taken me some time to dwell on the experience of having known the luminous spirit that Henry was. Henry continues to teach me that life is fleeting and precious, and not at all the sequence of well-made plans and milestones we hope or assume it will be. He taught me to look for the everyday joys, and that living in the present moment with a sense of gratitude is a skill that we must decide to perfect. Indeed, this skill takes a lifetime to perfect if we are lucky. And it is apparent that Henry had already completed that lesson well ahead of his time. It is with a deep sense of gratitude that I remember Henry and will treasure our time together. Of the 2 of us, I'm fairly certain that he was the greater teacher. Congratulations, Henry. You are missed, cherished, and forever remembered.